Hi everyone, my name's Colby Bronson. This is Whitney Huff and Sean Nagel. We're here from the Holographic Human Coach. We're going to be talking to you today about open versus closed systems and what that all means and how it correlates to us as human beings. Um, Whitney, what is an open system?
Well, an open system is open. Their boundaries are permeable. And what permeable means versus a closed system is, most of us know what a closed system is. To break it down and put it in simple terms, it's being stuck in a comfort zone that's really not comfort, I guess. And an open system it literally is an exchange of energy. The energy around you, the feedback coming in, you're taking it and internalizing it, and it's going back out. Your boundaries are permeable, meaning you're continually taking in data and feedback from your environment and integrating it into yourself and then sending it back out. And by being permeable, you never know how you're going to respond from situation to situation or person to person. You're literally unpredictable.
So what's the benefit other than being unpredictable, which to some people they're not going to view that as a benefit. Most people, I think most people in general have the understanding that it's good for somebody to be predictable.
Well, that's the way we're programmed to be.
Oh.
We're all seeking stability, and stability becomes dysfunctional. We were literally created, the future is created for disorder, and without disorder in our life, we remain stuck. And that's literally the cause of closed systems. Something's happened in our life that we became closed off, and it creates that addicted, the tolerance effect. We become addicted to, we get stuck in pain and problem and hardships, and so we literally close off to the outside world, basically, and we put up these walls, which we refer to as boundaries. It's staying in a place of blame, shame, and culpability. Your identity's burst. You're sympathizing with other people. You hear all these things from your environment. I'm not a good person. I'm not attractive. I'm not confident. I'm not. And you start to believe it about yourself, and so you create these boundaries to help basically hold yourself captive. And we were created to be open systems, but by the way we were programmed and raised in our environments, we become closed off because we don't, even though there is lack of coping skills, I guess, lack of healthy ways to respond to things, to be able to grow from it instead of closing off. And it's the way society's become, basically. We get programmed.
So, absolutely. And one of the things, one of the angles I'd like to take with open system is, as human beings, we walk around this earth. We have jobs we go to, and family, and friends, and other social activities, other things we do in life, and we've also got our life's problems. Being an open system, the greater we can become more open and more open systems, we're able to acknowledge, admit, accept, and express about the data in our environment. And this is so important. The data in our environment is there for us. It's for us to become greater, to pull potential out. And being more open, as we're admitting, accepting, and expressing the data in our environment, the things going on, what is heard, what is, what we see, the our taste, our smell, through the senses, right? This data is the data we get to admit, accept, and express for us to be able to overcome our life's challenges and be our potential. The data's here. It's all here. It's closed system. The data's not there. The data's not there because I already tried that.
Although the data is there, we're just denying,
Yeah, right.
refusing, and repressing
Right.
that it's there.
Yeah, it's that comment from people. It's one of the things that really gets me and kind of perks me up and go, oh, did you try that? Did you? So how much did you try that? You know, it's a definite indicator of closed system. I already did that. I tried that one. Doesn't work.
Right.
I didn't hear you say that. Frankly, I don't really care that you said it. You know, these are all typical responses from a closed system.
Yep.
And so, you know, I get to take that back to myself and take a look at, okay, well, that conversation, I certainly indicated that I didn't hear her or him. And I probably said her for the, first, probably because more in relation with like my wife. And that's the benefit of working to be an open system, especially in relationships, especially in relationships and communication. There's no quicker way to hurt somebody than that you love than to be closed off. It just will tears the relationship apart, tears the communication between one or more people apart.
Well, and part of that's the blame part of it.
No.
You did this, you did that, instead of owning your part and talking about the way you feel. And that's a big response for a closed system is blaming others for your response. The only thing we have control or choice over is the way we respond to a situation, and our reaction or response to something's about us. It's not anybody else's fault.
Things like blaming, Colby, what does this do for a person's conscious? Like, what impact does it have on somebody's ability to think?
Well, when I consciously choose to blame somebody else for my life circumstances, okay, I'm literally denying, refusing, and repressing that what's going on out here has anything to do with me and my own personal issues, right, or potential strengths. It's, I think, a direct reflection of somebody's unwillingness to point the camera back on themselves, figuratively, or look in the mirror and see their own personal reasons why they are noticing what they're noticing in their environment. And I think we get to talk about, we're talking about feedback, right? And when we say feedback, we're literally talking about data that's being absorbed through our subconscious mind, and we're consciously allowing certain parts and a very small fraction of that data or feedback to come up to our conscious mind that we can perceive, evaluate, judge, and decide upon, right? And I'd like to personally talk about the elements of a closed system versus an open system. And we're talking about a system that is comprised of three separate elements, and we've got tons of systems going on within our bodies and within our life all at the same time. And you can think of this about like an automobile, and it has a electric system, fuel system, all the different systems going on in a car, and all of those systems interrelate interdependently to create a whole car, a functioning car. You've heard it said, what part of the airplane flies? And the answer to that question is it's the whole plane, right? And so when we're talking about systems, we're talking about specifically an open versus a closed system, right? And a closed system, if you were to look at it, if you were to see it, right, if you were to envision a circle, you yourself are in the middle of that circle, and your first three senses fired is your worldview feedback, and your last three senses fired is your self-view, right? And so an open system allows feedback through the channels or mode of their first three senses fired. And we're talking about personality profiles, firing orders, and that's a sequence by which your central nervous system receives the data from its environment. So the open system admits, accepts, and expresses the worldview feedback, and its boundaries become permeable, meaning that they rearrange themselves based upon what you notice in your environment. And if I were to be an open system in all aspects of my life, I would be admitting the data as it came up. I would be accepting it as it came up and expressing new theories about it, right? I would be questioning it, whether or not it applies to me, if I'm getting it right. And there's a plethora of different ways that we can do this. I think the key in it all is to admit, accept, express, versus being a closed system and denying that it has anything to do with you, refusing to apply it to you in any way, shape, or form. And I'm sorry if I'm going on.
Sure, good.
Still, I think that we wouldn't be noticing it out here if it didn't have anything to do with us personally, right?
Right.
We can all agree on that. You're noticing things in your world based upon your own personal conscious perceptions of yourself.
Right. Your own reality.
Right. You're creating it. And I think it's really important to realize that you wouldn't be noticing it out here if you didn't have a reason to notice it within.
Well,
right?
and the lenses you're noticing it from, are you noticing it open or closed? And it's, open and closed systems, the physics of it's literally thermodynamics. And,
Yeah.
you're taking, right, your self view, and he talks about the circle, and the circle's your boundaries. This is your powering function, it's you, right? And your worldview is outside of here. Those are your variables, right? We've got all these variables outside of us that that has to flow through in order for us to grow. It's not, you can get in your car and be on the freeway and I can be an amazing safe driver. Am I being aware of the variables in my world?
That's what she always talks about with me and my motorcycle. I'm a safe driver, but she's like, but there's so many variables.
There absolutely are.
There's so many
Typically
variables.
going to be variables.
Yeah, but it's all the time in our environment. There's these variables that we get to add into the equation because it's for our growth, and we get to be aware of these things, and we can't calculate ourselves without including these variables outside of us, because we literally place these variables out here for our growth and change.
Well, and you mentioned the second law of thermodynamics, and if I'm speaking correctly about the second law of thermodynamics, it's with every action there is an equal or opposite reaction. Right?
It talks about you can deny, refuse, and repress your worldview as much as you choose to. It's not going away. It just gets louder and louder, and it becomes these natural forces outside of us pounding on our boundaries. These walls we placed up in our comfort zone to, how many times have you left a job and then an opportunity opens up or whatever? You got to let those see what happens, and sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't, and still you get to grow and keep changing and growing, because if we're not changing and growing, we're stuck, right? You might not lose anything, you definitely won't gain anything either. And as human beings, we're meant to grow and progress. So these natural forces will just get louder and louder and keep pounding on you, and we keep recreating the same problems. Basically, our past is in front of us and we keep repeating it. Same shit, different faces. Same people.
Yeah.
Over and over again. Still, it gets louder and louder and heavier until you realize it. And then, unfortunately, it gets to the point that our identity bursts. Right. And we burst from the inside out. It becomes an implosion. It's literally the atom bomb. And what I mean by that is closed systems can only duplicate itself, and in our families, our environments, some of us, we just don't know any better. So it's a continual, we just keep duplicating and duplicating and duplicating, and not to blame anybody. Some people just don't know any better, and still you get to learn these things and step outside of it and open your range of view and take in this feedback and start to grow from it. And when our identity bursts, it becomes that sympathizing, right? Mm-hmm. We're all intelligent beyond belief. We're all amazing beings, and we think it's that negative feedback, and we get addicted to it. This is literally the physics of addiction. Right. We get addicted to our thoughts, our emotional patterns. You know, our behaviors. It's not just about substances. There's different levels of addictions, right?
Yeah.
People use food to escape. People use work to escape. There's negative thoughts, depression. It literally, you become addicted to these things.
Right.
And then your identities burst and you're no longer who you truly are. You believe you are these things and it's not true.
Yeah, it's such an important, the little path of conversation you were going down there was so incredibly important. And something to understand, I think, okay, Colby, you were talking about open and closed systems. So open system being a whole, complete system. Right? A whole system, a totality.
Yeah.
And any totality or whole system, such as the open system, it has three elements. I was relating that one in my head. Admit, accept, and express.
Right.
And then we have the whole system of a closed system, right? It's totality as well.
Yeah.
And it denies, refuses, and represses. So those are the three elements of the closed system.
Right.
Now, if you've heard about this material at all that we're talking about today, and maybe read some of the books or looked at the book cover, it's right here. We have a new edition of this one coming out. It'll be actually called the Physics of Closed Systems. Though the same material, we're just updating it, and then it'll be the open system experience. Okay. There's another name, and this is so important to get. There's another name for a closed system.
Okay.
And that's addictive system.
Wow.
Addictive system, right? Okay. So what does this mean? This means that Whitney. And that's why I'm getting back to Whitney down the road that she was going on here. Yeah. We get back to Whitney, and Whitney's a closed system, right? I'm having a good little day, and I come and begin communicating with Whitney and her closed systems. Well, it's going to be a very difficult thing for even somebody that's working at being an open system to remain open around other closed systems.
Yeah.
And so we're not talking about just addiction to chemicals.
Yeah.
We become addicted to the way you treat me.
Emotions.
I get addicted to the way I treat me. I get addicted to emotions, specific emotions, right? I get addicted to thought patterns. I get addicted, and then there's gambling, and there's sex, or there's drugs. It's all closed systems. It's addictive systems.
Right.
Okay, and this is something, an area where I think a lot of people get confused or want to dismiss what's being talked about in regards to maybe closed systems or addictive systems. Oh, they're talking about drugs.
Yeah.
That doesn't apply to me. Well, you see this response, that doesn't apply to me. Well, it probably does. That's a good indication of a closed system.
Well, and it becomes, everything you just described becomes tolerance. And tolerance
Oh boy.
is literally the definition of tolerance, and there's like some really good pages on here. It's an ability to endure pain and hardship. And, it takes more and more as these things happen in our life that close us off, right? It's pretty sad. It becomes a tolerance effect, and then it takes more and more of the thoughts, the feelings, the behaviors to keep the true self captive. Right. So whether it's substances or gambling or whatever, it takes more and more of those behaviors, and it gets louder and louder, trying to shove all that stuff down and keep it closed off and keep that true self captive, the real us.
Right.
I mean, you can think about any number of people in your life that on a personal level that aren't chemically addicted. Okay, and there's people who are addicted to chaos. They're addicted to right. They're addicted to emotion. They're addicted to fear. They make fear-based decisions all the time, and really, I think it's unbeknownst to them. They don't know themselves in a way that this material allows you to know yourself, and it becomes a situation where you're literally running on, everything that you're referencing from your past.
Right.
And in order to be consciously aware and change, you get to start doing your best to remain an open system. And that is a very difficult concept to wrap your mind around to somebody who's just beginning to start reading this material or start admitting, accepting, and expressing all data.
There's a part in here. There's a part in this book that says, if you use drugs, you're a closed system, right? If a family member uses drugs, you're a closed system,
Right.
and that just blows my mind. Like, and I get it though. Being somebody that's used drugs, had addiction for a long time, and in families, I have a family, and just and noticing it, and noticing it's so true, but we don't want to admit that. Our loved ones don't want to admit that. When I work with other people,
And still, even like, we can all relate with addiction, like substance abuse addiction. Still, let's talk about society.
Yeah.
It's government. There's a reason you go places and they say don't talk religion or politics.
Right.
Like, those are subjects you don't talk about.
Right.
Why? Because people, this is my religion and it's the only right one, and
Don't want to
or
talk
it's
about that.
it's Trump, or we're just not talking, or you're gonna hear it. Those are closed system responses. It's my way or the highway. You're stuck in your own belief systems and not open to other feedback in your environment. And the way addicted means to devote or surrender oneself to something habitually or obsessively. To be addicted means to commit by a solemn act, often by compelling motives and attachment to an objective. Relationships,
Yeah.
work, gym,
Yeah.
thought patterns. People get addicted to adrenaline, finding adrenaline. They get addicted to, I have anxiety. They get, there's so many different levels of addiction, and it really boils down to you're just keeping yourself stuck.
So what is a person doing when they're being a closed system? Like I think that there's some level of like, they think they're protecting themselves, right? And it doesn't seem to work out so well. Like, it sounds nice to be able to protect yourself, right? It sounds nice. It sounds nice to be able to protect another person.
Right.
It just doesn't seem to work out well. And you were talking about imploding. Our boundaries get tighter. Then there's this feedback in the environment, and it's like, nope, I'm gonna close up more, and then more, and then more, and then more, and then more, and it's so loud, and we just close right up.
Well, and
Come apart.
to me, a lot of it was a victim stance.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like telling everybody else. It was what I tell myself. Like, you have no idea what I've been through. Like, it was my justifications, and I deserve this. And anything you're going to say to me, well, that's good, but really I don't give a shit. Like, I was so closed off to anybody, even the ones that truly loved me and cared about me, trying to help me. Like, it was, you don't want to be in that frame of mind and have someone tell you how much they love you and believe in you. It's,
Yeah.
geez, who wants
That's
to
much.
hear that when you're beating yourself up, and literally that's part of it too. You get in those relationships or friendships to match what's going on in here, and literally give you feedback of that condones what you feel is going on in here, instead of you're doing things you're not proud of or that go against who you truly are. You don't want a loving and supportive system around you telling you how great you are when, you're going to do more stuff to shove it down, all that fear and guilt and shame. And and it's...
Well, and that's where tolerance comes into play as well. You become more and more tolerant of the addictive behavior, and it creates more addictive behavior and just compounds and repeats until, and I can relate it from a real world standpoint of being physically addicted or chemically dependent upon a substance, right? And having a chemical dependency addiction, okay? And that addiction progresses and you become more tolerant of it and you use more and more and pretty soon your self-view is becoming avoided so much that your worldview caves in on itself, and you either end up in handcuffs and you end up going to rehab, and it gets you to a point where your boundaries are down and you're willing to look at yourself honestly, you know.
Let's take that. Let's go earlier in the timeline. It's these closed systems,
Right.
These exact things that we're talking about that even get people to the place of using. Are addictive systems, are closed systems, the way in which we choose to deal with our life and the world around us. And
Well-
it's incredibly sad that this concept isn't taught more openly.
Yeah.
Instead, we would rather deal with our loved ones from the tough love approach. You know, bully them into doing better.
Yeah.
Bully them into, going to school or doing these certain things or, whatever it is. That's our approach. That's what our moms and dads have done, and that's what their parents did, and that's what their parents did. And so that's what we're doing. That's okay. But it's not okay.
That's what I was just gonna say. Is that we're literally patterning our closed systems after the closed systems that came before us.
Yeah, it just
programmers-
duplicates.
Right.
And it's, you watch it, you talk about the justice system or our families dealing with us. It's a closed system response because they're not addressing the actual issue. It's all change the locks on the doors. You get a gift card for Christmas. It's, the government, we'll just throw them in jail. Oh, there's homeless people everywhere. I'll build one shelter over here. It's not addressing the actual problem in the system. It's putting little band-aids that really aren't doing anything, and you're not addressing it. You're approaching the issue with a closed system response, so it just keeps duplicating itself and growing and growing and growing.
I like that you brought up victim a bit ago, okay? This has got me. So I'm working with this editor for publishing this book. I'm working with this editor, and I get this response back through the process of, you might want to rethink the idea of blaming victims.
Oh yeah.
And I looked at this information, this data in front of me, and I said, one of my first response, of course, because I got some automatic responses from being protective, was, how dare you? That is complete contrary to what's been expressed in this book.
Everything inside the
And
book.
because this individual, based off her response, gives me the idea that she's likely identifies herself as a victim or takes that stance quite often, or advocates for victims. It was just too hard for her too much for her to look at without, admitting, accepting, expressing the data that she's reading, right? And so I want to clear that up a little bit, okay? In no way, in no how, are we describing or anything that we're blaming victims.
Right.
That it's one person's fault. That's not what the material is about. The material, and like I said, it's more contrary to that. Each of us, as individuals, have this opportunity to experience, right? Live this life on this planet, and we're not just little bugs. We're not ants just walking around. That's just not the case. The fact of the matter is we all get to experience, we all have limitless potential, and we all are blessed with, because of the interrelating interdependently of the system of this world, we have data in our environment, feedback. We're blessed with this. We're also, with this, we're blessed with this limitless potential, this greater I am that's constantly working at becoming greater, right? And so, and we'll talk about, we're going to get an anomaly sooner or later, so I might as well talk about it now. These anomalies that occur in our life, and yes, I said that right, the anomalies that occur in our life, and not the anomalies that happen to us, because that's just not the case. The case is each and everything that we experience as human beings is for our benefit, to pull potential out.
Yep.
Okay? I did not say that, this lady, this woman that was raped wasn't victimized. She absolutely was.
Mm-hmm.
And that's sad. That's so horrible.
Horrible.
I can't even imagine, nor do I want to even imagine how horrible that really is. Mm-hmm. At the same time, to be able to overcome such a thing and give back to others and to teach and to express love and compassion and everything, this is about the greater self, to bring out the greater self.
Yep.
Okay? I'm not saying the person wasn't victimized.
Right.
What I'm saying is the person can choose to become the greater them and not be a victim.
Right. It's in the conscious response
Right.
to the action. This is the second law of thermodynamics. An action has been purported towards you. It's been placed upon you. Your conscious response of said action dictates your closed versus an open system response. You're talking about a person who has been victimized, right? They've only been victimized if their conscious response is to be a victim. If your conscious response is to work through and find the purpose within such a horrific accident, or such a horrific, not even an accident, it would be
Just
crime.
malicious evil.
Right. And find within yourself the ability to respond in a way that's going to not only benefit you, but others around you. That is an open system response.
Yeah.
You're admitting, you're accepting, and express, this happened to me. This was horrible. This is atrocious. Still in all, I'm going to use the pain and the humiliation in that act to propel myself to benefit others and help them through their process, right?
Well, and
a
it
response.
sounds really easy to do, though. When it's,
It's not.
I'm gonna get raped, and then I'm just gonna be like, I'm gonna use it to help people. Like, it's about whether it's victim or not. There's things that go on in our life that happen that are wrong. There's wrong been done to us, and we all experience it as humans, and absolutely that's about our growth. But still, the things that happen in our lives, we get to heal from it, because if we're staying in that place of blame, we're drinking the poison and it's hurting us. It's no different than being in a conflict with someone, right? Half the time they're walking around, don't even know we're in conflict with them, and we're just drinking it in and just making ourselves miserable. And it's a process, and really, absolutely, these things come about so we can grow from them and find the purpose in it. You think about something so traumatic like that, it's like, what's the purpose in that happening to me? And it's hard to comprehend, like, what is the purpose in that happening to me? And still, it's about, I get to heal from it. Mm-hmm. We don't know what other people have been through in their lives, and that's what we're saying. Closed systems continue to duplicate themselves. Some people think beating someone up is showing them love, or that's how I've experienced love, or you buy me stuff and that means you love me. Like, these are duplicated responses that create this. You don't know what people have been through, that they did that to someone else, or this happened to them, so they keep repeating it because they don't know how to heal from it. Right. And
or it's too hard, or it hurts.
Yeah.
Or they might have to reveal parts of them that they're not okay revealing.
Yeah,
like, we were talking about open and closed systems. I've seen the response, and I just wanted to address this idea. This isn't about victim blaming. This isn't about being anything other than incredibly compassionate and accountable and loving and with open system. These are the attributes of an open system.
Well, and it's these events that happen on our timeline, these things that, you know, we're young and we have an imagination, we have these goals, we have these dreams and desires, and then things start to happen. And a lot of us become a product of our environment. I know wrong of anybody else because people are just operating. It's
the way
they are
we
programmed
perceive,
and
judge, and decide about it.
yeah, and these programs build from the time we're 1 to 8 years old, and we're literally responding the best we can based upon our environment and the things we're taking in, and it's duplication. You know, the things we watch on TV. What are we watching? What video games are we playing?
What are we falling asleep to?
Like these different things that go on, literally create this, and something happened in our life that we became closed off, and these events that we go through, those are like grains of sand on our timelines, and it's about our response to all these things that create these ripple effects, these belief systems, these, you know, the way we look at ourselves and feel about ourselves and others, and then we project that out into the world. And still being able to be open and, you know, admit merely means to acknowledge what's being heard and seen in your environment, and accept. You think about accepting, it doesn't mean you have to like it. It doesn't mean you're okay with it. It doesn't mean it is what it is.
It just that it was brought in.
And then I'm taking what I just acknowledged, the things I heard and said, and accepting, okay, this is it, and I'm coming up with theories, different dialogues, internal dialogues of what I could do with this information. And then I literally implement those, and then it's a continual process. The express just means to implement and repeat, and then you take in more feedback that you acknowledge, and it's a process. It's not like we just, you know, it's been years of being programmed this way, of being closed, and it's being closed becomes the norm. We're programmed to think that being closed is, like it talks about it, how often are we able to stand up and admit our weaknesses? Right? We get programmed that if I'm crying, I'm vulnerable, it's weakness. Still, that's not what we think when we watch other people, but that's, or
Sometimes
I will speak for myself, right? I look up to people that can get vulnerable and share their stuff, and then I do it, and I want to like, oh my gosh, everybody see me crying, and it's, we get programmed.
Recently we've all been challenged with creating these videos, getting this information out. And let's take a look just for a second. This is real life application going on in our lives, with open versus closed systems, right? Me? It is very clear to me that doing this and creating training videos is most definitely part of my potential. And the reason I know this, and me working to be an open system and take in the data and feedback in my environment, and I said working. So I'm working at it. Far from twinkling. It's really difficult for me to be up here in front of a camera,
Right.
and knowing it's getting recorded. My voice and the whole thing. It's going to be, we were kind of talking about this beforehand. I'm glad we were talking about open and closed systems, how applicable. Part of me wants to respond. There's a part of me that's down there that would really like to respond. Nope, not doing it. Nope, can't do it.
I'm pretty sure I said that earlier.
Well, I go through it on a daily basis, okay?
Yeah.
Really, I do. And then even in a more hostile, let's say the training video, doing the training videos, it's a little more, it's been my experience, a little more hostile situation. I'm working at, I could have closed that down, I could have blamed, very simple. Though there were some real truths and real understanding that came from the feedback that I was getting in there, my ability to perform or not perform, you know, the director of what was going on in there, the way that he was approaching it versus my response, and back and forth. You know, there's a lot to learn, especially in really hard times, in really difficult situations. And the more we can step back and admit and accept and express, and believe me, through all of it, that's on my mind, admit, accept, express, constantly, because it's very hard for me. Like, I can teach groups, I can go talk about the material, and I can just go and go and go. I come up here, we'll meet with Whitney and Janie and I'm like, I got a group in 45 minutes back in Orem, you know. We're just going off, right? I get in front of a camera, and it's been difficult for me. And I can choose to go to my potential, go towards my potential, and work at pulling the potential out, and not have such a negative experience.
Yeah.
Or I can fight it.
Yeah. And one is an open system response versus one is a closed system response.
Right. And what's the closed system response going to get me?
It's gonna.
Am I going to grow?
No.
No.
Regression.
Shit, I could probably get fired.
Yeah.
And none of that is what I would like.
Right.
I would like to sit back in training seminars before, and I was like, gosh, dang, like that guy's up in front of 105 people, challenging them, confident, loving, caring, just dapper, looking great, you know? And I remember sitting in there and going, gosh, wow, impressive, you know? And then get the opportunity for myself to do such things. And I'm like...
So you recognize it in someone else, Sean? What does that mean?
I have and do recognize it in someone else. It means that it's this much more important. Especially if I'm working at following my own advice, okay? To follow through. And also, with it, to keep others engaged and lift them up with, right?
Yeah.
This is like applicable definition of being an open system. And I hope I'm doing it as good as I'm explaining it, because sometimes I don't feel that way.
Right.
Well, then it's a process. It's not like because we know these things, we're open systems all the time. I would love to say that. But still, like reading this book all the time and teaching this class, it brings more awareness of like, oh, okay, that was a super close response. You know?
Right. And then to beat yourself up about it would be a close response. So it takes work.
It does. And still, the more you do it, it creates that program so it gets easier and easier. Are any of us open systems all the time? No, and it changes from person to person and situation to situation. And still, the more aware we are of it, the more we can integrate it in our lives and realize we responded closed. Okay, we can go up and choose to respond differently.
So let's talk a little bit about indicators, okay? Like for me and myself, I'm going about my life. How, what are some ways, and I know we've talked about a couple briefly, but what are some ways that I can say, yep, you're being a closed system, Sean. You got to open up. You got to figure out or have the courage to begin admitting, accepting, expressing. What's going on in my life that's going to tell me I'm being a closed system?
Anytime I respond to somebody's feedback with the words "I know" is a great indicator that I'm not open to what they're talking about.
So I've shut that down.
Yep.
I've denied, refused, repressed.
Well, because, and we can talk about this literally, when you use the words "I know," you're shutting your subconscious mind off from allowing any information to be sent up to your conscious mind for perception, evaluation, judgment, and decision.
Right.
When you say "I know," your subconscious says, "Well, okay, he knows enough. He doesn't need any information on that. Here we go. We're done."
That's a hard pill to swallow.
Right.
I'm surprised I didn't get that kind of feedback from that editor.
How often do you say when somebody's saying, you could have done this better, or somebody that you really care about is talking to you, your parents first, or your really good friends, and they're giving you some constructive feedback, and you're saying, "Oh, I know," and your intentions with those words are probably consciously at least good.
Right.
Still, there's something going on in your subconscious mind with those linguistics that shuts you off to any and all information
So it limits you.
that could progress, that could help you progress.
So I'm limited.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
Cool. So one of the actions I would do is have responses such as "I know," as a closed system, right?
That is a
And
close
then
system
my
response.
experience would be that I become limited.
Right.
Just from that one closed system response. I limit myself.
Yeah.
A limitless being. What does that create? Being a limitless being and limiting yourself. What does that create in your life?
Jeez.
Well, what would that create in my life?
Boundaries.
Yeah?
Unhealthy
Tight ones.
boundaries. And keep you closed off.
What else? More applicably, like where anybody could understand. What would be going on in my life? What would I be experiencing? What, chaos maybe?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Well, and you would eventually get to the stability, chaos, and complete randomness disorder, which we call the FELS, the far
Yeah.
from the equilibrium stage. And that's really the stage you get to when you implode, right?
Far from equilibrium.
It's a
That
system.
sounds difficult.
Right.
That sounds tough. And the sad thing about that is, closed systems even begin to create tolerance to that whole cycle,
Jeez.
to the fells.
If
It's
that-
like I can endure this much, and then, it's endure more, endure more, endure more, endure more, and then it's
Well, and it's not even a
Crazy.
conscious thing, like, oh, I can
Right.
endure more.
That's
It's like
scary.
you just become used to it, and it's sad. And really, if you take an opportunity to look over your life and, like, watch the things you grew to be just okay with
Right.
instead of addressing. And for me, it's like my biggest wake-up call is, because I get the opportunity to work with a lot of closed systems, and not saying that I'm open all the time, because I'm not, is when I'm predicting the way they're going to respond
oh,
is my biggest, like, when I'm like, yeah, I know what they're going to do. I'm like, I'm closed,
yeah.
and then, and when I get upset with the feedback or a conversation and I get
Oh, yeah.
the conflict going, and for me, it's people say criticism, it's feedback, but sometimes it's just not the funnest to get this feedback, and the way I choose to respond to it is like, if I'm closed off to it, I'm getting pissed.
Mhm.
Or if I know the way you're going to respond, I'm not giving myself or you an opportunity to. And those are the things we teach. So I'm like, then I really start to beat myself up, which is also closed.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, I just predicted the way they were going to respond. That's not helpful for any of us.
So would resistance be an indicator of a closed system?
I mean, and that's such a huge thing.
What you
Resistance
resist
persists.
persists. So let me get this right. So I'm going about my daily life, right? And I have this data in my environment that just continues to come back at me, come back, keeps coming back at me. I'm probably resisting, right? So this is another good way to stay in tuned with things that I'm resisting, is by noticing that same or similar feedback continuing to come at me. And we resist so many things. I want to resist this, doing this, doing it. Well, I'm in it, so it's this. But if I was not in front of the camera, I would be saying, doing all that.
Yeah.
Part of me wants to resist. It does. And that part of me is the closed system. That part of me is saying, no. You gotta be safe. Climb back in your shell, right over here in the same comfortable little spot you were, and just protect, stay in the little bubble. And it seriously, and that's how dangerous it is, because then I can't even acknowledge what's going on around me. And my perception of things, my ability to perceive, evaluate, judge, and decide differently, greatly diminished.
Oh, yeah.
Which means my ability to do different in same or similar situations is greatly impacted.
Yep.
Yeah.
And doing different in same or similar situations is the applicable definition of change.
Right.
Like, that's how important it is to be aware of and come to know ourselves more in regards to our closed systems. In which ways are we being closed?
Right.
You know, where can I progress? Where's an area in my life that I can begin to admit, accept, and express? And work to. Because we don't have to. I mean, theory is that we don't have to experience the anomalies to be great.
Right.
Right? Now, a lot of my past would indicate otherwise. But I've seen it. I've even seen it myself over the last couple years. I can pull potential out. Really bad things don't have to happen for me to become better. It doesn't have to. And I think that's where the closed systems become very vulnerable to more heartache and more pain and suffering. They don't even know. They have no idea.
Yeah.
I'm doing it because this is the way I've always done it.
Yeah.
And nobody, you're like, okay. And it's the way my mom and dad did it too. They were just fine.
Yeah. And that leads me to say that another great indicator of you being closed is monitoring your emotional present. You know, what am I emotional about right now, and what are those emotions negatively affecting me, or are they negative in nature? And if so, you know, questioning them and theorizing upon them and creating the dialogue about them that Whitney just expressed, and doing your very best to come up with new theories about the emotions that you're feeling in the present. And that correlates with your mental thoughts in regards to the situation, and then your behaviors in regards to the emotions that you're experiencing. I know that as I have experienced negative attributes about myself, my first response is going to be usually to evade them and be closed off to them, because they're not fun to deal with. They're not fun to deal with. And even as I'm talking about this right now, I'm thinking of some examples today when I've been extremely closed.
Okay.
Extremely closed.
Well, and it's I'm like over here processing. I'm like, he's talking about emotions, and I'm like leading with beliefs all day. Like, you know, I'm like, my clothes is my beliefs. And like, he's like, yeah, my emotions. I'm like, I mean, those get there eventually when you start to challenge my beliefs.
Well, let's talk about why that is. And earlier, when I was explaining the worldview and self-view and the firing sequence your central nervous system goes through depending on your personality profile, Whitney is a functionist. Her first and fourth sense fired are in her beliefs. And so she leads with her beliefs. Me as an actionist, my reference senses are in my present, and they are very emotional. So if I monitor my emotions, I can find out where in time I'm referencing, right? If it's a negative emotion, I'm probably referencing something that's behind me. It's program model, right? And when she's referencing her beliefs, she's going to do this in a process which is different than mine. Still both effectual, right?
So you're saying because her first sense fired has to do with character,
Right.
or beliefs about character, and her fourth sense fired has to do with strategies, or beliefs about the way things work, that her worldview is going to greatly impact her self-view.
Absolutely.
In regards to strategies.
And behaviors.
So Whitney's not going to be a very good tactician with her beliefs of her character being poor.
Mm-hmm.
So the potential of it, though, and the importance of being an open system, and to be confident and have good character traits and be these character traits.
Yeah.
That sounds like limitless potential in regard to your strategies.
And for me, it's being open to other people's beliefs, because
Yeah.
before, when I was super closed off to them, and sometimes I for sure still struggle with it, but it's like